Good morning, everyone. Today I'll be presenting the full summary of our assigned section from Homer's Odyssey, specifically covering the events in Book 3 and Book 4. I'll begin with Book 3, the sacred sacrifice and departure from Pylos. King Nestor of Pylos performs a grand sacrifice to the goddess Minerva. He orders a goldsmith to gild the horns of heifer, making it worthy of the goddess. Following the ritual prayers and offerings, the heifer is brought down, and the sacrifice is completed with great ceremony. After the sacrifice, something touching happens. Nestor's youngest daughter, lovely Polycaste, baths and dresses Telemachus in fine garments, making him look, as Homer writes, like a god. Then Telemachus sets off with Nestor's son, Pisistratus, by chariot. They travel through Perai and journey onward until they finally reach Sparta, the kingdom of Menelaus. Now we move to Book 4, Hospitality and from Sparta and Royal Splendor. When Telemachus and Pisistratus arrive, King Menelaus is in the middle of celebrating his children's wedding feast. His servant hesitates about whether to welcome the strangers, but Menelaus is very clear. He rebukes his servant by saying, "We ourselves have stayed at other people's house before. Show them in and give them supper." This shows that Menelaus insists on immediate hospitality, even rebuking any hesitation to welcome strangers. For the ancient Greeks, hospitality or xena was a sacred duty. Telemachus is completely awestruck by the palace. He leans close to Pisistratus and whispers, "Look at the gleam of bronze and gold, of amber, ivory, and silver. Everything is so splendid. It is like seeing the palace of Olympian Jove." Then comes one of the most emotionally powerful moments of this section. Menelaus begins to share his deep feelings. He says that his vast wealth brings him no joy because it was earned while his brother and comrade perished in the Trojan War. Then Menelaus speaks of his deep sorrow for the lost Odysseus, saying that no man worked harder or sacrificed more, and yet Odysseus has been gone so long that no one knows if he is alive or dead. When Telemachus hears this, he is moved to tears. He holds his cloak up to hide his face with both hands, overcoming with grief for his long-absent father. And then, amidst all this sorrow, Helen enters the hall like a goddess. She descends from her high perfume room, looking, as Homer says, as lovely as Diana herself. Her arrival brings a shift in atmosphere from grief to something more complex, as her presence always carries the weight of the war she is said to have caused. To summarize, this section shows us three key themes. First, the importance of religious piety, shown through Nestor's sacrifice to Minerva. Second, the great value of hospitality, in other words, xena, shown through Menelaus welcoming strangers even during a feast. Third, the lasting scars of war, shown through Menelaus' grief and Telemachus' tears for Odysseus.
Now I'll talk about the epic vocabulary in the Odyssey. In Chapter 2, the vocabulary is divided into 3 parts. Each part explains the journey of Telemachus. Words such as anointed, mental, provision, and hospitality shows how guests are treated with care and respect. In ancient Greek culture, the hospitality was treated with care and respect. In ancient Greek culture, hospitality was considered a very important value. Menelaus welcomed Telemachus and his companion warmly, provided food, clothing, and place to rest, which reflects its warmth. Next, the words like chariot, reins, provision, and kinsman help describe Telemachus' journey. These words created a vivid picture of travel. Through these details, readers can better understand the challenge and experience of his journey. Finally, words such as gleam, splendor, and kindness or bards, this expression strongly expresses emotions. They show both the beauty and wealth of Menelaus' palace and the sadness caused by his brother's death. Now I'll talk about the grammar and sentence structures. One important grammar feature is the use of the past perfect tense. For example, when she had washed him and anointed him with oil. This sentence now expresses the situation when the daughter of the king now washes the Telemachus. It describes an action that happened before another action in the past. The text also contains long sentence and with clauses. Menelaus overheard him and said, this kind of sentence now shows the sentence provided detailed descriptions and make the story feel more formal and epic. Another feature is used to the relative clause, such as Diocles lived, who was son to Ortilochus. This sentence is now relative to clauses giving additional information about people and places. In terms of the sentence structures, Homer often used literally word order or inversion. Well, for example, thus did he spoke, instead of he spoke thus. This style gives the story of more dramatic and heroic tone, which is not used in today's grammar. In conclusion, through these vocabulary features and sentence structures, Homer makes a story feel formal, grand, and heroic. He also emphasizes the importance of hospitality, status, and strong emotions.
And next up, we're going to look at the literary techniques in this certain chapter of Odyssey. But before we move on, it's worth mentioning about the concept of epic simile. Epic simile, also known as the Homeric simile, is unlike a regular simile, which makes a quick comparison in a line or two. An epic simile is an extended, elaborate comparison that unfolds over multiple lines. It goes beyond the quick points, and it slows the narrative down, pulls the readers into the vivid image, and lets the comparison breathe. Homer essentially invented this technique, and that's why it's also called the Homeric simile, and it remains one of the most distinctive features of his writing. And it's the feature that makes him one of the greatest writers of all time. Next, we're going to move on and look at some of the literary techniques that I have discovered in this chapter of Odyssey. It's simile and imagery. Let's look at the similes first. Before we move on, I'd like to mention that the text on the PowerPoints is wrong, so just never mind that and just listen. I just recommend you to listen to my presentation. First of all, in simile, I've discovered it in a sentence named, Telemachus and Pisistratus were astonished when they saw it, for its splendor was as that of the sun and the moon. So the first technique I've looked at is simile, and Homer compares the splendor of Menelaus' palace to the sun and the moon, two things that are genuinely beyond measure. That's what makes the comparison work. It's not reading for something beautiful, but it's reaching for something incomprehensible. So what that does emotionally is put the reader in Telemachus' position. He's a young man who has grown up without his father and far from his kind of wealth. Homer doesn't describe the palace in detail. He tells us how it feels to see it, and the sun and the moon is exactly the right scale for that. Next up, we're going to look at the imagery and moreover personification in this certain sentence. When the child of morning, rosy-fingered dawn, appeared, they again yoked their horses and drove out. The second technique is imagery and personification. The phrase first works as an imagery. As you can see here, rosy fingers stretching across the sky, a vivid visual that makes the arrival of dawn feel grand and expansive. It's the kind of description that slows you down as a reader and actually makes you picture the scene vividly and with a lot of description. But it's not only about imagery, but it's also about personification to the Olympic gods. It's also a direct reference to the Eos, the Greek goddess of dawn. By personifying sunrise as a goddess, Homer takes what is otherwise a natural phenomenon and gives it a divine relevance. Each time she appears in the text, the passage of time feels less like a plot device and more like a meaningful moment in Telemachus' journey. In conclusion, through simile and personified imagery, Homer takes what is essential a travel sequence and gives it emotional and mythological depth. Our techniques aren't decorative, They're doing real work in shaping how we experience Telemachus' journey.
Today I'll be discussing two of the most powerful themes in Homer's Odyssey, reputation and sacrifice, as portrayed in a specific excerpt from the chapter where Telemachus visits King Menelaus in Sparta. In this short scene, two central themes emerge clearly. Reputation, often expressed through the Greek concept of kleos, and sacrifice, the painful cost behind every heroic achievement. Let's begin with reputation. In the Homeric world, reputation is far more than just being well known. It functions as a social identity, something revealed through one's lineage, appearance, wealth, and heroic deeds. The Greeks call this concept kleos, which can be translated as eternal glory. The first way reputation appears in this passage is through appearance and lineage. When Telemachus and Pisistratus arrive at the palace, the servant immediately describes them as two men who look like the sons of Zeus. In ancient Greek society, physical appearance was considered visible proof of family reputation. And in this moment, Telemachus is already embodying his father's legacy without saying a single word. Reputation is also expressed through wealth. The text describes Menelaus' palace as that of the sun and the moon. Telemachus is so overwhelmed that he whispers it is like seeing the palace of the Olympic Zeus. For the ancient Greeks, this kind of material splendor wasn't just decoration. It was a tangible measure of a king's dignity and reputation. Menelaus' wealth visibly proclaims his status before he says a word about who he is. The deepest expression of reputation in this passage, however, comes through heroic deeds. When Menelaus speaks of Odysseus, he says, "No one of all the Achaeans worked so hard or risked so much as he did." At this moment of the story, no one knows whether Odysseus is alive or dead. A hero may die, but as long as his deeds are remembered and retold, he never truly disappears. This naturally brings us to our second theme, sacrifice. In this passage, sacrifice is portrayed as the painful price that heroes must pay in exchange for their reputation. It also extends to the irrevocable losses caused by war, losses that affect not only the heroes themselves, but also the families they leave behind. Let's start with Menelaus' own sacrifice. Rather than boasting about his enormous wealth, Menelaus emphasizes the cost he had to obtain. While his palace gleams with riches, those riches came at the price of nearly a decade away from his family, home, and peace. Homer is reminding us that even the most fortunate heroes carry hidden burdens. But Menelaus' deepest sacrifice goes far beyond time and hardship. When he was away, his brother Agamemnon was murdered. Reflecting on this, Menelaus cries out, "Would that I had only a third of what now I have now, so that I had stayed at home, and all those were living who perished on the plain of Troy." This is a powerful moment. Menelaus would willingly give up 2/3 of his fortune just to bring back the dead. And importantly, sacrifice isn't limited to the heroes themselves. War and heroism extract a price from those left behind as well. Penelope has spent 20 years waiting, and Telemachus has grown up without a father. Their ordinary lives has been sacrificed just as surely as the lives of the soldiers who were never returned. So in conclusion, reputation and sacrifice function as two sides of the same coin in this passage. Through the scene, Homer delivers a profound message that a hero's reputation is never purely glorious, and perhaps that is exactly what makes the Homeric heroes feel so deeply human, even thousands of years later. Thank you.